Welcome to today's episode of The Growth Zone. I am Christian Bartsch. What is the core benefit of listening to this show? Business leaders in corporate and privately held companies gain insights into trends and strategies that provide them with a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Each episode focuses on an area such as marketing, sales, innovation, or funding that is absolutely critical to the growth of companies, whether they are startups or corporate global players, where management needs to juggle the challenges of market entry or knowing how to navigate the uncertainties of disruptive developments. Mind feeding is where clarity evolves and helps solving organizational challenges. For those who listen to the entire episode, I have a special surprise gift. I am working on some great guests that are industry leaders in management, innovation, and marketing. Let's get started on today's episode. Today I am with Andie, who's based in Texas, and our topic today that we're going to be talking about is difference between growth and scaling and why it is important. So before we get deeper into our conversation, Andie, can you please tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, good. Hello. So excited to be here and hopefully offer a lot of information and value to the listeners. But my name is Andie Monet, and I have been a management consultant for over 30 years. And my specialty is in optimizing businesses. So it's a wonderful place that can be a frustrating place for a lot of small businesses because you can grow revenue and find that you're growing costs just as quickly as your revenue grows and finding solutions to that.
Yeah, so then you mean that eventually revenue and growth are growing, but the difference isn't growing. So you're not generating actually more profit. It's just
Exactly.
your more hassle, but
Yes.
there's no improvement really in the
Yes.
overall result. And entrepreneurs, founders, owners, or even investors become frustrated because
Mm-hmm.
there's more noise happening, but it's not more coming out actually after the profit margin, or maybe even shrinking. It could be as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what do you see as the key difference between growth and scaling?
Oftentimes the small business owners they kind of think those are the same things, and they're not. And so growth is a wonderful word. Everybody wants to grow. And growth can be a lot of different things, right? You can grow in revenue, you can grow in number of customers, you can grow your client base, like geographically or in different types of industries, and that's great. I mean, growth is a wonderful thing, but scaling is different, and so scaling is much more. Yes, we want your revenue to grow, but it's growing at a higher and even exponentially higher rate than your revenue. And so when you hear a lot of information about scaling, there's a lot more than just revenue. And with scaling, your profits are now increasing exponentially as well, which you don't necessarily get with growth. So it's really important to understand the difference, because if you can't scale before you're growing, and if you're growing too fast, which there is, I think, such a thing, then you're at the point where you could be working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. You could be throwing money at the solutions. You can be, hiring because there's so many hours that you need to give back to the revenue that you're creating, right? How do you continue to service your customers, whether it's a product or a service? So that is when growth can get really out of hand. And one of two things usually happens. Either with some companies, you can almost grow yourself out of business, which happens with high growth companies. And then in a couple of years, they've scaled or even gone out of business. Or you have to find a solution to the what I call the madness of high growth companies. So that's when scaling really, really makes a big impact, not only financially, but also really in the hours that you work and in the sanity of the people that work there.
Yeah, so then actually the revenue is just growing, but the profits shrinking, and the resources are being burned. There's no
Yes.
beneficial outcome.
Yeah, no, and it's not sustainable. There you can only work so many hours in a week. You can only hire so many people to support the company and the revenue growth, and it's not a good model. And it's okay to get there. It's just not okay to stay there. That's one of the really, I think, one of the keys is identifying, is this a short-term growth phase, or is it really is your business in a place where this is sustainable, or the growth is sustaining itself for a long period of time, and you need a long-term solution to that?
Yeah, and that's really where most companies then actually suffer, or then eventually get taken over, because maybe people see there's a potential, but they notice that they're obviously doing it the wrong way.
Yes.
Maybe trying to scale in a red ocean instead of finding a blue ocean, where
Yes.
there's maybe untapped demand actually, and people can really even not only generate more revenue, but the profits will be as well much better than in a market where everybody's just cutting each other just by cutting prices.
Right.
There's then no margin left, really.
Right. It's the fallacy of make it up and grow in volume. But if you don't have a profit anyway, your volume is not going to change that profit margin.
Exactly, because usually you'd say, okay, well, if you increase your volume, then of course your procurement costs are lower. It's like with when you start producing cars. Eventually, if you've got enough cars that you're manufacturing, you can buy the tires cheaper and so on. Or if you do a
Absolutely.
venture with another car manufacturer, then you can double the amount of tires that you're buying, and you share, of course, the benefits with the other partner. But if you can't really reduce the cost by scaling, and it's just increasing, and maybe even the risks, the financial risk, are even increasing in a way that you're not being rewarded for your risk.
Oh, absolutely. Because,
Yeah, what's
a
the
lot of
point?
times, and people think that, because the key performance indicators that a lot of company want to share is their revenue growth, right? Or their client
Mm.
growth. And that's, again, I love the word wonderful, but as I mentioned, it's a wonderful thing. But unless you're really, doing a lot more metrics and a lot more analysis, the revenue is just not in itself enough to determine whether it's good growth or sustainable growth. And one of the things that I feel like the reason that I'm good at what I do is that when they grow, they usually have one of three categories that they want to grow in. They want to grow in, or if they're growing so much, they want to grow in revenue, or they want to hire people, or they want to build a new or migrate to a new system infrastructure or ERP system. And it's usually one of those three, typically. But the consultants will tell you that, or business partners will tell you that, or investors will, if they have input. But really, if you optimize all three of those at the same time, you're going to be just in an amazing position. And that's really what I do. So I look at the people, I look at the system, I look at the operations, I look at the finances, I looked at the client base, I look at the cost involved in creating the revenue, and we find out what can we do where we can limit or even reduce a lot of costs. And so for one small example is one of the not healthcare, beauty supply companies. They do cleansers and masks and things like that, and they're based in Hong Kong. And the short version of that story is that them, like a lot of other small businesses, think that costs are fixed. And they are to an extent. But what I ended up doing is we increased their profit margin 25% almost overnight because we changed the size of a lot of their containers by only 1 ounce. And the reason that that was so effective is because once you passed a certain level, the freight charges almost double, right? They go up between 25 and 40%. But if you didn't look at just freight as being fixed, but looked at, okay, well, where are the thresholds in that freight cost? And if we reduce it by 1 ounce and it's liquid, so liquids are heavy, now by reducing it by 1 ounce, we saved 25% just in shipping. That was a decision that as soon as you made it, literally your next order, you've already now created a new profit level.
Exactly, and it's less hassle as well with all the things that come, because of course it's not just only shipping, let's say from Hong Kong, from the factory to US or Europe or wherever, but then of course it's shipping then as well from the harbor.
Exactly.
To retail, or even if you have a warehouse somewhere and you do like mail order shipping, online sales and so on, that ounce can be quite a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so why do you think it is so important to really focus on scaling in a way that it's actually sustainable and can really generate real growth?
Well, I mean, there's that long-term sustainability, right? If you can't get through a very challenging growth stage, the company won't even be viable anymore after that. But there's also another piece that a lot of people really forget, which is, the physical, mental, emotional piece to it, because as we briefly talked about, you can only work so many long hours per week, and again, it's another small business myth that the more you work, the better your company is going to be, and it's not sustainable, right? You can only work 60, 70, 80 hours a week for for limited periods of time, and that depends on each person, but it's not good for your physical health, it's not good for your mental health, it's not good if you have a family. Like, there's other things outside that get affected by the number of hours you work in a week. So I would also, this is just my personal opinion, that I feel like not only working a reasonable amount of hours is generally a healthy thing to do, but I have the opinion that it also can help build, which is not the topic of our conversation, but I think that having a really good, stable work week can also be beneficial for your family, because with work, you have to be focused, you have to be strategic, and you have to make plans to get there. And if you do all of those things based around, in this particular topic, scaling, then you actually are able to accomplish more with your family. You can have goals for your children and be able to help support them through their life, but and day to day. But I think that they're very complementary. If the skills that you use for work can also be great skills for parenting or relationships, or things outside of work as well.
Yeah, and applies as well to the staff that you've got, because if you're just, let's say, burning their resources and exhausting them, they'll either quit or
Yes.
have a burnout
Oh my
or any
goodness,
kind of things,
yes.
or you
Absolutely.
even have the worst case, which is for an entrepreneur. The worst case is you have work-related accidents. Let's say
Yes.
somebody is totally exhausted, overtired, isn't focused,
Yes.
and drives the forklift into, let's say, one of the shelves, and not only the guy gets injured, somebody else maybe gets injured. You've got the forklift damaged, you've got the whole shelf, plus all the inventory that gets damaged, and you say, I can't ship, the boxes all crushed and so on. I have to
and
repackage.
The delay.
Yeah, but even just if you think of just having to repackage the products up, maybe inside are okay, but the parcels, everything is messed up. I think repackaging it, let's say in the US or in Europe, salary costs, it's cheaper to reorder the whole shipment from China, because the wages are much higher in the Western society.
Absolutely. And so many other things are affected by that. Not only the time it takes to redo it, but the time lost for the client, missed opportunities with others. And then as well as in the US, we have workers' comp, and that's a whole nother insurance craziness. So, insurance rates go up, and somebody might be not allowed back into the workplace, and there's evaluations that need to be done depending on the severity of the accident, and it just goes on and on and on. So yeah, I mean, there's so many benefits to identifying, extensive growth, and then making really strategic decisions on scaling options where you're not only affecting the cost and the profit, but the morale. And then with morale comes really hard workers, usually productivity increases and morale goes up. And I mean, there's so many other benefits as well.
Exactly, and the quality of service and the products are improved then as well. Because
Yes.
if somebody calls and has a problem, if the customer service guy is messed up, exhausted, tired, frustrated, or whatever, he might not be in the best state actually to help the client, and he might be fed up
Yes.
and even let's say let off a huge dispute, and the customer starts posting all over the internet that the
Oh yeah,
company is a
reputation,
terrible, yeah,
absolutely.
it's killing the reputation just because you let, it's like you create a snowball. You're standing at the top
Hmm.
of the hill and you throw it down. Of course, this snowball will go through your entire company, and eventually it reaches your customer base, and then it all falls
Absolutely.
apart, and you're
And,
gone.
in addition to that, which just in another way of looking at it as well, is that you could grow so much that you start losing clients because either you're
Hmm.
not able to fulfill orders or services, or you have potentially bad customer service, or you're not able to respond well enough, or you're not able to onboard new clients in a reasonable amount of time, or not able to respond to them as quickly. Like there's again, so many downfalls to not scaling at the proper time.
Exactly, and even if you're not shipping products, you're like maybe like a SaaS company who's
Hmm.
producing software that companies are using or anything of that. And if companies are coming to you and saying, "Hey, I've got here a bug, this and this doesn't work," and after 3 months you still haven't fixed it because you're
Hmm.
so busy getting new clients and doing other stuff and adding new features, but not fixing the underlying problems, um,
Yes.
it's going to drive people eventually to start thinking maybe we'll
Well, other
try a different
options.
product. Yeah.
Exactly. And
And
then,
move out again.
and they might not be even as good as you, and they're still
Yeah.
willing to do it just because either of consistency or stability or response rate.
Yeah.
So, absolutely.
Yeah. Or they fear that if this is going this path, then eventually maybe you'll go out of business. So
Hmm.
as long as they can access the data and get it out, they'll start moving. And suddenly it sucks the whole business upside down, and then you've lost everything. And that's the thing where you have to think, well, how can you really scale properly? Um, And what would you say? What's your recommendation on how to best scale a business in the current situation that we have?
One of the things that people often and easily miss is streamlining processes. And, a lot of corporations are known for doing that when at all possible, but you can do it in small businesses as well. And so, as a small example, I had a client come to me, a new potential client, and he said, "Hi, I need to redo my Excel worksheet." And I said, "Well, I, I don't normally redo Excel worksheets. So why don't you tell me about it?" And he said, "Well, it's kind of old. It's about 10 years old. And I just think there's ways it can be revamped and maybe streamlined a little bit." And I said, "Oh, well, that must be why you're calling me. So, tell me how you use it." And he said, "Well, I have people in the field, and they put their hours that they worked on their phone in a mobile app, and that data gets uploaded to SharePoint. And the SharePoint data is downloaded to Excel, and then the Excel data is transferred to multiple, depending on how many projects there are, 9 to 12 other Excel worksheets." And I said, and what's the purpose of this? And he said, so I can bill my clients. And I said, well, how long does it take you to bill your clients? He says, about 3 to 4 weeks. And I
Oh,
said, I am not rebuilding your Excel worksheet.
no wonder. This sounds very inefficient.
It was, and it, well, and
Crazy.
he, yes, I said, no, there's no way. And I said, I won't rebuild your Excel worksheet, but I will give you another solution. And you can take it or you can leave it. It's, I'm not offended. And he said, okay, well, what's your solution? And I got rid of the Excel worksheet altogether, and I created the data from SharePoint to upload into QuickBooks and just have him bill. And it was a 1 to 2 day process. So now with that really, simplified method, he now had 3 to 4 weeks a month where he can get new business. And then his one and only bookkeeper could spend time supporting him in business development. And just in 1 month, he tripled his revenue. And his costs didn't go up at all. So you can be a small business, you can be a medium-sized business, you can be, a big business. My biggest client is Monster Energy Drink, and I do the same thing with them. So I save them millions and millions and millions of dollars, but all because one way to scale is by streamlining processes. But you start that process by having a documented process, which sounds a little counterintuitive, but once you can map out everything, that's the first step to finding how you can improve it.
Absolutely, and it sounds really very interesting. The fact is that he had such a complicated system, and it must have taken him time. And when you think of it, even then the customer has then to review the invoice, and they'll need some time.
Yes.
Maybe they have a habit of only paying on one day of the month, and if you miss that date, he has to wait maybe 2 months for his money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a cash flow problem. Yeah.
And exactly. And it was a cash flow problem because he was, you don't want to get in the habit of, financing because you can't get the billing out fast enough so that you don't get paid fast enough. So there was a lot of other issues besides just bringing, taking that long to do that. But absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely, and there's even a legal risk from I know from other things that even if you take too long to bill your client, then a court might even go and say, well, you can't expect your client to pay that invoice because it's so far away, the time between getting the service, the work performed and billing, that the client has no way actually realistically to actually make sense of it and see whether it is accurate or whether you're trying to skim him with an extra 10-20%. And he can't relate it because he hasn't even got a clue. And he can, of course, do it as detailed as possible. Here, I screwed one screw here left and one screw right. But he has no idea whether he actually screwed it or didn't screw it, whether it had to be.
And then I would also add that in certain cases, it could be a detriment to your client because they are not able to budget correctly. They're not able to manage their cash flow correctly. And, there's other things. There's always other things that are affected by small things. I mean, whether it's inside of your company or with your customers or with your vendors, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because now you can't pay your vendors either. And that's, again, the opposite problem.
Yeah. And by billing in that way as well, eventually it creates an annoyance for the client because he has then to explain why the invoice is so late and why didn't we know it earlier, and we should have had the timesheet long before, if it's something where he has to maybe even sign off the timesheet.
Oh, they did. Yes. No, there had to be, there were multiple checks on it, and not only internally for billing, and it was very comprehensive reporting that went along with the billing. And so.
Yeah, and you just need some silly mistake inside, and then it's compounds and ooh.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. Once in one business, we had the idea of moving to a CRM system that was made in India, And we sent an offer to the client, and he went not crazy, but he was a bit shocked because it said 17 million. It was actually it was actually 7,000, but it got the
Oh no, the
the
decimal
thousand
point.
in the wrong place, and it used the wrong set of it's used for the particular country the wrong set, so it looked like
Right. Instead of a comma,
17 million.
it's a period and then period
Yeah,
for a comma.
at
Yes.
the end there weren't 2 zeros, there were 3 zeros, and terrible. It might have been working for rupees, but it definitely didn't work.
Oh my goodness.
In euros or dollars, it just didn't work. It just was appalling, and we dumped it after, I think, 2 weeks. We dumped the whole system. It was pointless.
Oh yeah. Well, and then
Yeah.
there's the fear that in certain cases customers could feel like you did it deliberately, or are you credible? Are you honest? And all of those things that
Yeah.
if it was an honest mistake, you can tell them that it was an honest mistake, but if they have nothing to compare it to, right? Because they don't know you yet.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we eventually, after testing many systems, we started building our own system, because it was just, it did, even if you went into a shop or bought some software from retailer or from a big company, it just didn't fit our needs. So we
Yeah.
built our own system. And we have a big client who's a multinational franchise in food. And they came one day to us and said, well, we need one position more in your invoice because there's this and this missing in the invoice, and we need it for compliance. So,
Mhm.
okay. Half an hour later, we had it built into our system.
Oh, I love
sent
it.
the invoice, and the customer was happy, and they've still with us. Even after 7 years, they're still with us as a customer. And
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it because you know what? The thing about a business is that again, not the topic of scaling, but you have to add value, right?
Exactly.
If you're not providing value and gosh forbid if you don't even share what your value is, which is even worse, that's a whole sales thing by itself. Why would anybody even want to do business with you?
Exactly. And if the amount of pain that you have with that custom or with that company that you're buying from is greater than the value that they're delivering, it's just not worth doing business with them.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think one of my biggest personal ways to deal with customers is you always have to listen, which is hard for salespeople in general because they always want to tell you how wonderful they are, and we can't live without salespeople. So don't get me wrong, I love salespeople, but often the drawback, the challenge is, okay, well, let's listen to what they want and how you can provide value to them. It's not what your benefits are and how wonderful you are and how great you are and how many clients you are. It's how can your company provide the value that the potential customer needs to have, right? And a lot of times that piece is missed, which always makes me so sad.
Yeah, because they often forget that it's all about the client, not about
Exactly.
your product, your services, or what, but actually what the client is going to use it for. How can they really benefit from it,
Yes.
and how it's going to improve the overall
Yes.
situation.
Absolutely.
And that's the crazy thing when you think of it. It's in so many industries. This is a typical thing. And when you actually change the game and go on, even if you're dealing with importers and the importers import your products and then they're giving it to the retailers, and retailers are selling it to, let's say, small companies or to big companies, and providing maybe even services. If you go and explain to them how they can change the lives of the customers, of the end buyer, then they suddenly become empowered to actually go and adapt that way of selling, and they are increasing massively the orders. I know it from my dad used to do that when he used to travel around the world and he used to give presentations. He was from the sales managers, the only one who had too many orders. and his boss complained and said, we're not going to talk about you. You've got too many orders. You've overdone it totally. And then everybody else, and you guys, you have too little. You have to fix this.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but that's how he traveled around 99 countries, eventually in his lifetime of his main time of being an export manager. And that's what he did and enjoyed. That's how he came to travel around Middle East, around Europe, South America, even Asia, many countries, Africa. And yeah, because once suddenly he got this opportunity, found out, hey, wait a minute, this is a magical tool. Everybody else started coming and they wanted to have as well that he'd come and do this kind of presentation. And suddenly they all were increasing revenue. And that's the thing when you suddenly notice, wait a minute, am I actually just trying to sell them my product? Or am I actually trying to empower them to
Exactly.
sell the product for me and to create demand? And suddenly,
Absolutely.
wow, everything scales. And that's the thing. It's not by like some people used to travel even to countries and then discuss with the local salespeople the numbers. And they really expected to increase sales by discussing the numbers.
That never works.
No, it doesn't work.
Because you have to, your heart has, one way or another, your heart or your mind, something has to be connected, right?
Exactly.
And if you don't understand the value, you can't make that connection. I mean, I'm going to mess up this story, but I heard this story about this Mercedes salesman, and he was always the top salesman everywhere he, for years, and like every year for decades. And so the I guess it was a franchise, but who knows? But one of the managers or the CEO or whoever said that he wanted somebody to interview him so that they can learn his techniques and try to train, do a sales training. And the interviewer said, hey, I'm here to interview you. And he says, well, what's your technique? And he says, well, I don't have one. He's like, well, you can't not have a technique. You're the best seller for who knows how many 20 years. He's like, well, why don't you come with me on a test drive with a customer? So kind of long story short, the punchline was that he never actually sold the vehicle. Like he just said, why are you interested in the Mercedes? And they would tell him, they're like, well, my dad had one and, he's not here anymore and just really reminds me of him. Or they would literally just sell themselves, and he would go, and even with disputes, not disputes, but objections. And they'd say, well, it's a little bit too expensive for me. And he goes, yeah, we are a little bit more expensive. Like he didn't, finagle. He was just honest. Said, yeah, we're a little bit more expensive, but if this is what you want because of this reason, then that decision's up to you. And everybody would buy from him. But I love that story because the value that he was providing was actually just mirroring the value that the customer had already had coming in.
Yeah, and he was actually helping them make up their mind whether, and the important thing I see as well from your example is that actually later on when the customer went out, he didn't suddenly suffer buyer's remorse because he
Exactly.
knew that was exactly was solving his problem. That was the desired thing, the thing that he really, really wanted to have. And then I'm sure he must have been looking forward to getting the car delivered and then sitting in his brand new car, driving out of the showroom, and then taking his family on the journey and enjoying the time. And every time when friends come and say, oh, you've got a new Mercedes. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
exactly.
Yeah. And that's the crazy thing. It's a funny thing because you talk of cars, because when I left school, I did first a business training with BMW. And it took me more than 15 years to convince my dad to switch from Audi to BMW. And the funny thing is, I remember him sitting with all this stuff he could choose for Audi. And he was ticking off, no, I don't want this extra. I don't want this extra, not this extra. No. Cutting the cost. And later on, when he had the BMW, I said, what's this feature? Oh, this wasn't a package. And what's this? There wasn't another package. Yeah, and I got then that package and this and this. And I thought, this sales guy has been absolutely sold. And why? Because on the first attempt, they nearly messed it up. They sent him off with a test car with the worst seats you could put somebody in, which
Oh
was
my goodness.
And they would have lost the business just because I convinced them actually to give it a second chance and try a different car. He tried then as well the same car that I have, and he then actually they decided to buy it. My mother loved it so much. She went once they came back with the car. She went straight to the upholstery and to the color and everything, and she started selecting the stuff. Yeah.
I love it.
And that's the craziest thing of it. She doesn't like very much driving with him because of course after a certain age she gets certain kind of habits that are not exactly always pleasant driving with them. But nevertheless, she liked the car. But the other one, oh no, the terrible car, the seats are appalling and you don't feel really safe. And that's the thing. Even if you're in the first stage, and we went to test a car last year, we tested a car, and the sales guy didn't make any effort to find out whether we're on the right product.
Right.
Later on, I'm looking at it and thought, it's a bit small. I looked at the different size of the car, but the guy wasn't even making an attempt to actually try to maybe find out if he could actually sell us the other car and he would have sold it. Instead, now we just test drive a different car from a different brand, and we are already more or less configured this new, facelift. The car's been given now a facelift, so it's going to be the next version that's being delivered from November or so to Europe. It's got a few nice extras. Price went up by $400, but it's not a big deal. So you notice then, of course, the difference between a sales guy that makes an effort to get the sale and someone who is obviously demotivated, whether it's by the brand or by training organization, whatever. There must be a reason why the person isn't motivated to even try to get the deal.
Sometimes I find that they're just not even sometimes there's I want to say personal things going on, but sometimes they just are never trained to even learn how to have a conversation with someone.
Yeah, and they should even at least have some kind of inner motivation that they want to make more money and find out how can I make more money. And even if they see some other brand who's selling, there must be a way to crack this nut. And if they just don't bother, then think, why are they doing this job? Because it's pointless. And there's so much out there that you can do in training, whether you do it online, whether you go to a course.
Oh, absolutely.
There's so many providers, whether it's closing the deals or how do I have a conversation
or dealing with objections or reading body language or asking open-ended questions. And that is one of the points I think is really important to business ownership, specifically, is the mentality that the mindset, right? I mean, I feel like if you want to do this, you'll find a way. And you have to be accountable for yourself. You can't have a victim mentality or, I can't succeed because of somebody else or because of the industry or because of COVID, because there's a lot of success that can be had if you're willing to not, what I call, stir your bucket of mud, So, and if you're really in a growth mindset and strong in that, oh my goodness, the world just opens up completely. I mean, and this goes for scaling as well, not just revenue, but hey, how do I cut my costs? I don't know the answers. I don't know what to do about it. I don't know, what's the first step I can take. But if you're determined enough, and you're going to do it on your own or get a consultant or get a reference or whatever, there's a way to do it.
Exactly. And if you can't scale if you can't sell more. That's the key thing. You have to sell. And maybe you cut some costs away that you don't really need and add something on top that actually will make it easier to close. Just a simple example. For instance, some companies let you test drive a car. They give you the car for 1 hour. They maybe send you with a sales guy with you, but the sales guy can't close you. But another company, I've experienced that, especially in automotive. They give you the car. They invite you even on an excursion. You get lunch. You get you've got a bottle of water in the car sitting ready and so on. That's where they really value you. They value the customer. Or when they
Absolutely.
invite you to a coffee or to a snack or something, it's crazy when you see how much effort some do and how little some just don't even manage to bother. And it's about building value and creating that you are valued, you're an important customer for me, and it doesn't matter whether you're buying a small car or you're buying a big car. Because let's say I want to buy for my daughter a car. And I
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, once she'll be 18, she doesn't need to have the biggest, she has to first learn to drive,
Right.
get experience. I get a
Exactly.
small car.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, maybe I'm trying to get a cheap car, or maybe I'm thinking, well, but I want to be safe enough that even if she does have an accident, she won't get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course, the smaller car, the less space for safety you have.
Exactly.
Yeah, but even if I go, let's say, to some other brand that I don't usually buy from, and the guy sells me this car with a good value, good effort, and so on, maybe I might even consider buying more of his cars for my company. And it
Oh,
doesn't mean that,
absolutely.
yeah, and it doesn't mean that I want to drive that car, but maybe I buy from him 10 cars for the service department. Hey, that's for him a big, huge paycheck that he gets from his boss
Oh,
then.
absolutely. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
because
that part of it
yeah,
is, like you said, the value, but also, you care about them, right? You care
yeah,
about, if they get what they want and their experience, and to have people feel like they're appreciated or wanted or special, right? That's part of, but not in a fake, creepy way, obviously, but in
no,
a
but
genuine,
interested way.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, and you build a relationship, and these people are then so happy that they'll tell others, hey, you must go to Frank or uh, to Charlotte or whoever and talk to her. She'll help you find the right car and so on. That's a perfect thing. And they take time, they know this stuff, and it says, then I must go, and definitely. And if they go there, it says, no, she's not there today. Then I come the other day. And they make the
Absolutely.
extra effort to talk to that particular person because they don't want to talk with somebody who just wants to take the business away from his colleague, but being lazy because he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make any effort on building business and trying to, let's say, shovel something under your foot before you know it.
Yes.
And you think, what's this? I didn't want to have this. I don't even need it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Or giving
it's
you
like,
something that you don't want. And,
yeah,
one of the things which is unfortunate that I've seen also is some salesmen get upset when you say no. And that doesn't help you at all.
yeah,
Like,
because it actually means I don't know it all. So he has to find out what's the problem, what's behind it. He has to ask, what's holding you back? What's in your mind? Tell me,
mhm.
and then I can find out what's the problem. And that's the thing. Sometimes people just say no because maybe they're confused. There's something going on in their mind
Yes.
and thinks, oh, if I do this, it'll break down and so
Yes.
on. So obviously, I need to. No, it's just that it's easier for you, and then you get this advantage, and you think, oh, that's a no-brainer. Let's
And
buy it.
yes, and some objections aren't even really objections. They're just,
Yeah,
concerns.
confusion,
Confusion,
confusion.
exactly. They
Yeah,
don't have the enough information to make the choice that would help them. And I think that's the
exactly.
same in any industry, right? Like I
Hmm.
can say, "Hey, I can help you scale your business," and if you don't know what scaling is, why would you want to hire me, right?
Exactly, exactly. And the thing that's why, because when you've cut the costs and then the guy says, okay, I've got the cost, but I still can't scale, something is wrong here, then you maybe have to say, okay, let's test drive your sales engine and see whether you're doing something wrong, because maybe you're handing people something that costs you money and it's worthless, because customer leaves the shop and throws it in the next bin. Because what
Mm-hmm.
am I supposed to do with this garbage? Yeah, like
Yes,
giving them some cheap gift, and I think, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't even smoke or something, like, for instance, that.
exactly.
Instead,
Or
if yeah, for instance, I got once many years ago, got from a service company a what do you call it? A multifunctional tool that you can use to open a bottle, to open a wine bottle, and other kind of stuff. That thing is still existing with me. It's useful, but some kind of thing like nowadays a pen or a simple bottle opener. It's got no value. I've got so many of those. I lose them. I throw them away. Whatever. Yeah,
Oh no,
that's
so
the thing.
very, very
It has
true.
to be relevant.
Very much so. And,
Yeah.
not relevancy, oh my goodness, is so important. But, in addition to the relevancy is also, it's similar, but the applicability, right?
Mhm.
So, you could, let's say, like my daughter's in her 20s, and she went to buy her own, paying with her own money, her first car ever, and I was so proud of her. But that's another topic. But anyway, she went, and I went with her, and they kept telling her all the things that aren't relevant to her, right? Aren't applicable to her, and she was like, I don't want to buy the car, and I said, that's up to you. It's your money, but I think that what he's saying is just not the correct information. And so, I told her all of the questions that I knew she wanted to know, and how, because it was an SUV, it was a little mini SUV, and it had four-wheel drive, and she wanted to go up to the mountains, and he never talked about any of that because he never asked her. So she ended up
And
buying the
then,
car, but again, how do you expect her to say yes when the information you're giving her isn't even relevant to her and her life and her lifestyle?
yeah, and he doesn't make it understandable for that. She noticed, okay, when I'm going with four-wheel drive, it is easier to drive up. If I get somewhere stuck, it's
Mm-hmm.
easier. Try with a front wheel or back wheel to get stuck from a hole that's bigger than your tires. You need a shovel if you're on
Yes, exactly.
somewhere
And
in the
another
desert
person.
or yeah. Exactly, two-person. I know that from we lived in South America, and there used to be beaches like kilometers, nobody there, and you had these little waves. And when you stuck with your Volkswagen bus, stuck in it, then my dad had to take out his shovel, fold it up,
Mm-hmm.
and start shoveling somehow and finding all sorts of stuff to somehow get
But
the car
underneath,
unstuck. Yeah.
yes,
And of
exactly.
course, I was a small kid, so I couldn't help him. And that was something he had to fix himself. And my mother helped him as well, of course, as much as possible. But he still had to figure out, how do I get the car out?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something where if he'd had a four-wheel drive, it might have been easier. But that's, of course, something that he has to explain to her, and maybe figure out as well, maybe what's important to her as well. Because if she's taking let's say, a tent or something with her, uh, there are tents that are very small and there are tents that are very big, and
Mm-hmm.
she
That's
might not
right.
even get into the car, where it says, oh, then I need foldable seats. Oh,
Right.
now makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. I mean, he was
yeah.
talking about the sunroof and the air conditioning, and she's like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, it's nice, but I usually drive with open window. Yeah, we can air condition the back. Then my dog gets a cold. Okay. And you do need foldable seats. Otherwise, the dog has no space.
Exactly.
Yeah, but he's a poodle.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah, but that's the thing, which is so important for, I think, especially as you said, when you're trying to help these companies to find out how they can scale. Scaling goes in all directions to fix the thing, and then really make space to scale. And that's a good
Absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because otherwise they can't move back and forth. You need to be moving on the scale. So it was great and fun as well having you here on the show. And before we end the show, how can people get in contact with you if they want to connect with you or find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. It was such a pleasure talking with you. The easiest way is my email, which is Andie
Mhm.
at ssd-intl.com. But I'm also on Instagram, which is Andie.Monet
Mhm.
_SSD. And I love questions. I love DMs. I love, hey, what do you think about this? Because, sometimes you just have to ask and get steered in a little bit in the right direction, or, provide just a little bit of help to help people out. It doesn't always have to be consulting. It can be, just a friend saying, what do you think about this? I'm happy to have those conversations. But I also have monthly free webinars at www.andiesfreegift.com. So Andies is ANDIES, no apostrophe. And so I always try to give out growth and scaling suggestions and information and tools and templates, because there's always little pieces that you can learn along the way before you're ready to actually have somebody help you, right? But I really, building, my personal opinion is that, as we give back, we help our communities and we help our economies and we help the world just interact together better when we're able to give our information freely. I mean, obviously, there's the consulting piece, but I just think that having a resource to go and get information is so important in the world today.
Yeah, absolutely. And people need to understand as well the why and how it really relates to their individual situation. And then they've got the information. It just needs to be assembled in the right structure, right order.
Exactly.
And then suddenly they press all the buttons and it lights up and you've got a nice Christmas tree.
Yes.
And the customers are buying all the parcels that you've placed for them under the Christmas tree. And that's where it really then makes the nice.
That's when you look forward to waking up and walking into your business. You exactly. Feel like this is it. This is why I do what I do.
Exactly. And that's how then people actually really can scale and add more business, or even if it means as well opening new shops in other locations, but in a way that it really can scale and not only generate more revenue, but it benefits as well community by creating more jobs.
Absolutely.
And you're creating jobs as well at the supplier side, because they are selling to you more stuff, so they need more people, and their suppliers grow as well. It's a chain.
Absolutely. Definitely a chain reaction.
Exactly.
And we all of course, take a part in that.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's a food of chain that grows over time and creates benefit for multiple societies. And it's better than just staying put and saying, I don't want to grow. I need to grow, because if I don't grow, I shrink. And that's reality in many ways.
Very true. And I think that as just one last note is that as you become financially successful, you can also give so much more back to the community as well. Not necessarily not like donations or contributions, but in the sense of jobs and good leadership and just good morale and good integrity and, making the economies around the world prosper even better than without you if you do a good job.
Yeah, and your mindset changes as well. Like recently, I was with my family out, and I saw so many people just passing by a beggar, and they didn't give him anything, and he was absolutely not disappointed, but you could see that he was frustrated that nobody was willing to give him a coin or anything that he could buy himself some food. And I passed by, and I thought I'll give him something on the way back, and I gave him something. I was the only one who gave him something, and I thought, it doesn't hurt me. I'm not poorer because of that, and it's important as well for the children to see and to understand that we are responsible not only for the people who we do business with, the people who we hire, whether they are on our payroll or contractors. What we do, we always influence others.
Absolutely.
And even if we produce products, if our products, let's say, hurt the environment, eventually it'll hurt us as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellently. And that's the thing that we see. We have to have a different mindset. And when we generate more revenue, we can be more generous, and we have less on our mind that's wasting our energy on things that are not helping us and others. Yeah, it was great talking to you, and I'm sure in the future we'll be talking again on similar topics of growth and scaling.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me. I'm hoping that whoever hears this can find find insight and value and information, and I'm looking forward to reaching out to people who connect with me.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Growth Zone with Christian Bartsch. Thank you for listening. Please leave a review or rating here on iTunes or on podchaser.com. If you found the content helpful, then share it on social media. I would like to invite you to follow our show so that you don't miss the upcoming interviews with leaders in the market. Simply visit the website follow.premiareach.com. I will be adding the link also to the description of this episode so that you just need to click on that link. For those of you who are listening and signing up to follow the show, I have reserved a free copy of the ultimate guide on content marketing. This is the strategy that got me top corporate clients like McDonald's, Linde, Hewlett-Packard, Deutsche Bank, Volvo, and many others. That strategy has been working for over 10 years. It also got me contracts with police, transport authorities, military, and several universities, and even leading research institutes. For sure, it also worked wonders as it got me many small, medium-sized entrepreneurs and enterprises as clients. And that even included international clients from all around the world. The link to sign up for our free broadcasting service and the guide is follow.premiareach.com. That will give you access to the most recent version of my ultimate guide on content marketing. You can follow me as well on Twitter by using the Twitter handle CAP_Bartsch. That's spelled Charlie, Alpha, Papa, Bravo, Alpha, Romeo, Tango, Sierra, Charlie, Hotel. Yes, that is CAP_Bartsch. Charlie, Alpha, Papa, Bravo, Alpha, Romeo, Tango, Sierra, Charlie, Hotel.